Hello, I welcome you to this episode of ICAN on Air program. Africa continues to be fast in becoming a highway for global brands. And the most available and authentic indicators not only see the south of the Sahara as the fastest growing area, but equally point at Nigeria, regardless of its unbelievable indices of poor governance, high unemployment rate, poverty, and underdevelopment. Of course, our country, Nigeria, rich in biodiversity, mineral resources, oil, gas, and cheap manpower, with an estimated population of about 406 million people. We are import dependent and investor attractive. It, however, have this anxiety-laden and variegated domestic insecurity and infrastructural deficit. When we put this into consideration, then we begin to look and say to ourselves, the era of oil is ready, food is ready, is almost gone. Only total realistic reformation and restructuring can reroute Nigeria out of the vicious structural gaps. Now, joining me as guests in our question and answer segment today to delve deeper insights on this topic of transforming the Nigerian economic structure and then looking at the productivity question is Mr. Adebisi SANDA, B.Sc, FCA. He is an economic and management consultant and a former partner leader, transaction advisory services of Ernst & Young West Africa. He was in that position between 2006 and 2016. He has delivered and he has discussed papers at several and international conferences, including Energy Institute's annual global conference in 2013 and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria's international conference in 2013. We shall obey more on our awesome guests very, very shortly. Oh, yes, I must not forget that our guest has earned for himself the highest, oh yes, the highest honor in Ibadan land, the Ibadan Merit Award. An executive director of Shelter Afrique in Kenya. We will unveil more on our guest very shortly. Also on this program, we are going to be having a bit of tidbits, news about ICAN to let you into a peep into our diary, a bit of some adverts. I would please like you to stay connected. We shall be back with you and our guests very shortly.
Million people. The West African sub-region represents a huge but unexplored market that needs to be leveraged to achieve accelerated growth and development. However, this huge potential is challenged by poor governance, weak infrastructural and industrial base. Evidently, the need for economic prosperity in West Africa cannot be overemphasized. To this end, the Association of Accountancy Body in West Africa, ABWA, is hosting the second ECOWAS ABWA Joint Congress. Theme: Good Governance and Sustainable Development for Regional Prosperity. The date is March the 16th to the 19th, 2022, and venue is Farmington Hotel, Monrovia, Liberia. For inquiries, please call telephone number +234 802 315 0360. Email address is abwa_secretariat@yahoo.com. Website is www.abwa-online.org.
Mr. B.Sc. Sanda, our High Chief, our High Ibadan Chief. Let me join ICAN on Air to say congratulations for your merit award and welcome to ICAN on Air proper today.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's a pleasure to join you, and thanks for the very good job you are doing for ICAN. ICAN being a major intellectual property profession. Naturally, we should be adding so much value to the economy.
You very much. Very much.
Thank you.
Very much. And very quickly, my dear professional and highly esteemed guests, the subject of the Nigerian economic structure, getting to frame it, setting the foundation will be very appropriate at this time. Because when one hears the phrase economic structure, what naturally strikes one's mind? And is there a global or universal definition, explanation for such phrase? And do Nigeria have an economic structure? If yes, how does it work? If no, why is it not existing?
Well, every nation has economic structure, whether it is poor or good or optimal. It's another issue. Economic structure, I describe it in two dimensions. Every modern economy is divided into several sectors, i.e. utility, power, telecommunications, transport, aviation, road transport, rail, manufacturing, and then you have some subsectors. You can also even have subsectors up to 3 or 4 levels below. And then the second dimension of it is for each sector, you look at the value chain. Now, when you now talk of the structure of Nigerian economy, you are asking, when we look at our gross domestic product, which sectors produce our gross domestic product? That is the total output of all citizens in the nation each year. In which sectors are people engaged and producing goods and services? And what you realize is that agriculture probably still takes about 40% of our gross domestic product. And manufacturing, which in highly industrialized nations and matured economies is like 15-20%. Is poultry below 10% here. That's what we mean by Nigerian having a poor economic structure. Then when you look at even each of the sectors in which Nigeria is operating, the first thing is that we are not in all the modern sectors of a modern economy. Then even the sectors in which we are, at what point of the value chain are we? Are we at the very low end of the value chain or the very high end of the value chain? So for instance, you talk of furniture industry. Today, unfortunately, the Chinese have come to take away our furniture industry. In the 70s, in the 80s, I can remember very well, the first set of upholstery you bought in the 80s, that I bought in the 80s, these were produced by Nigerian furniture makers. The wood were owned down in the forest in Nigeria, and the sawmillers, cut it into planks, and the furniture maker turned it into wood, into furniture. But today, you go into a showroom of a Chinese furniture seller, and you buy everything there. It brings all the way from China. And so we are not present in all the major sectors. Look at energy, for instance, the electricity energy. Which today is comatose, more or less, because the distribution companies, they can only give, even the major urban centers, they can only give up to 4 hours of quality electricity to domestic as well as industrial users. So to the extent that, and then let me quickly give you a consequence of that. If you are not present in all the sectors of the economy in which you should be present, and you are living a modern life, you are not living a Stone Age life. You wear good shoes, good shirts, good wristwatches. It means that you are not producing what you are consuming. So somebody is producing somewhere, and you are parting with your own money. That is your hard currency. That's the foreign exchange to buy, and that is the unfortunate thing about poor economic structure. Another thing is the fact that people are not engaged because there are not enough sectors. The sectors are not deep even where they exist. It means there isn't enough job opportunities for people, and that's why we have all these problems we have in our nation. Poor GDP growth rate, poor employment, very, very high unemployment rate, as high as about 50, 55 for age grade 18 to 40, which is a very, very highly productive demographic group in the society. So talking of top line, which is the language of the accountant, that's output. We are not just there. And then talking of bottom line, talking of efficiency, because in the value chain of even the sectors in which we are at a very narrow strip of the value chain. That is where the value add is limited.
Excellent.
We have these compounded economic problems that we are facing. And unless we address it, we will stay there for a very, very long time.
I actually like how you started. All economists, everybody must have some structure of sorts. What we have found, and from the way you have described, is that we are either not there or that is grossly dysfunctional. And thanks for all those beautiful explanations, telling us that we are mass consumer and import dependent. But as you are aware, Nigerians are suffering amidst plenty. You made mention of vast agricultural land. We talked about we have huge mineral and oil deposits. Yes, citizens do not have access to basic things of life. Now, as an economist, what is really the problem? What is really the problem? Is there a reason why Nigeria is not self-sufficient in any of these, even in these areas that we are present or we are seemingly to be present in? What is the problem?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch you. If you will raise your voice a little, I didn't quite catch you.
I was making of the point that we are suffering amidst plenty, whether it's in agri, whether it's in mineral resources, whether it's in oil and gas. We don't have access to basic things of life. And I was just asking you that as an economist, what really would be the problem? Is there a reason why Nigeria is not self-sufficient in any of these areas that I think we have comparative advantage?
You see, in a modern life, nations leaders are usually deliberate in creating fortune for their nation. But where you have leaders that are unpatriotic, leaders that are more or less rogue leaders, that will not happen. And I tell you, let me use other words to bring home what I'm talking about. In the time of Adam Smith, in the 1700 era, the economists of the time talked about comparative advantage, that if you have resources, you should concentrate your production on areas where you are very, very good in natural resources. Now, later, around 1800 or so, the rest of Europe, because Britain led in the Industrial Revolution, and Britain was preaching that, that was the general wisdom conventional wisdom in economic thinking. And then the other European nations, France, Germany, realized that Britain was going to make them to remain perpetually a raw material provider for its own industries. And so they came up with new concept that there is nothing sacrosanct about comparative advantage. It was that same concept, if you advance the arm of the clock, fast forward, when management became a major subject, that they talked about competitive advantage. I give you a few case studies. India deliberately decided that it was going to become a world leader in vegetable oil. It has no choice, because how do you feed over 1 billion people, over 1 billion mouths, if you are not deliberate in creating food for yourself? And so it sat down, did a long-term plan. How do I become a world leader in production of vegetable oil? And today, India is a leader in production of vegetable oil. So you have to be very deliberate. You will have heard of resource costs. When a nation is endowed with resources, their unpatriotic leaders can delude themselves and their citizens that is all they need. But you realize that it has been demonstrated that it is a cost even to have resources. Japan, according to the statistics, the arable land of Japan is less than 30% because it's mostly rocky and sandy country. Yet you will not believe they still manage to grow rice and produce some other food that they eat. Besides that, Japan has no oil. It sells refined petroleum products all over the world because it was deliberate. It deliberately developed itself, recognizing its limitation of resource endowment. So the resources you have mentioned are not what will determine your economic structure, but the deliberateness of your leadership in creating the same. Unfortunately, transformation of the Nigerian economy has been in the realm of sophistry by our political and civilian drone politicians. I call them drone politicians because you remember, as we're way back in 1977, the military head of state then was talking of restructuring of the economy. That was 1977. In 1987, the military head of state then was talking of restructuring of the economy. In 1997, the military head of state then was talking. In 2007, 2017, and today, 2022. That's a space of almost 45 years in between. We are still talking of it. It doesn't happen with people who are serious. You don't need more than that number of years to transform your economy. I mean, China transformed its economy between 1999 and today from a $1 trillion economy to over $17 trillion economy, 17, $20 trillion economy between 1999 and today. So what are we talking?
Interesting.
In that space of time, just sophistry, dishonesty, looting of government treasury, etc., by our own patriotic politicians. So
would that therefore
depends on how serious your leaders are.
Would that therefore answer Shoson Olusoji? How can we effectively produce what we eat? Okay, and even export what we produce in order to have a robust economy in line with best global practice? What are your candid suggestions as fellow of ICAN?
Well, how do we produce what we eat and even export what we produce? It's so easy. If you look at don't forget, agriculture is a very serious business that requires planning and that has become highly industrialized today. That's one thing we fail to realize. Unfortunately, there has been retrogression in almost every spheres of life in this country. In the 70s, in the 60s, there was what we call the extension workers. So you have organizations that are into research and adaptation of research output in area of agri. How do you make the farmers to adapt it and impact their yield significantly? Unfortunately, today, you don't have any formal structure of agricultural production. I give you an example. In the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, you had what you call the is the government agency for bulk buying of products, but it was limited essentially to the cash crops. And what they did at that time was that they provided a very solid structure for supply of input, both seed as well as pesticide, chemicals, tractors, etc., so that during the planting season, farmers are supported with input, sourced locally, some imported. You know, that kind of framework for agriculture is no longer there today. And the pseudo-economists we have always talk of the invisible ants that allocate resources. There's no invisible ant anywhere in the world. Up to today, the President of the United States reports to his country every month the number of new jobs it has created, because it is something that must be guided. If you talk of a free market economy, there is still some guidance, you know, below the surface, which is not too conspicuous to observers and to analysts. But it is ever there in all of the industrialized nations. They are tracking critical issues about their economy. So if you are going to produce enough food and export, you must back that vision up with a solid structure to achieve it. And what does that mean? You have to provide seedlings for the farmers. You have to provide tractors for the farmers. How many Nigerians will go into assembly of tractor when government does not take agriculture serious? How many farmers will buy tractor, waste his money on tractor, when the next thing you hear is that somebody has entered his farm to kidnap him? All these things are connected. So you provide the environment, but at the same time, you actually target what are the support, what are the incentives, and what are the encumbrances that you need to remove from the way of the farmers, the people who have opted into go into that sector of our economy. But today, okay, let's use the case study of the rice that we talking of a rice revolution in Nigeria. Do you know that the yield of paddy rice in Nigeria is below 2 tons per hectare? And the same rice even in Egypt, which is an arid zone, is not less than 8 tons per hectare. So how will smuggling not remain attractive? How will people not continue to smuggle rice into Nigeria? Because they will smuggle rice, the rice we get here at about 20 or 30% of the cost of the production of the local rice. I'm not saying smuggling is right. I'm not saying it should be encouraged, it should be completely discouraged. But as you have the push factor, you also have the pull factor about smuggling. You know, so let the seriousness be injected into how we revolutionize the production of rice. Let's have target. Year one, you may not achieve fantastic yield, but you don't remain there in year 5, year 6. You don't continue to remain in dismal state of production. and expect that your market will not become a victim to products from other parts of the world. It's a global world, and you are not an island, and you cannot shield yourself from the rest of the world. It's not possible. You can't do it forever, you know.
Things seems to be going. You are trying to refer to the marketing boards in those days, the days of yore.
Yes, that was what I was trying to remember. Which thank you for that.
Yes. Now, Mr. Sanda, haven't painted what you have really painted, from the yield, from the focus, to the fact that obviously economic development plans have really not yielded. You just reeled out from 1977 to 87, and 97, 2007, 2017 up till now, and we are still seem to be marching on the same spot. Let's look at physical structures now. In Nigeria today, the physical structures that once housed huge factories, industries are now desolate and reduced to shadow of their past. Now, will you agree to the view that vagaries of government policies account for this position? And what of the prohibitive cost of doing business?
Now, let's face reality and our misfortune. You see, when state institutions lack excellence as their charter, there is never a way the state policies, even if they are good policies, will function or will achieve the desired result. State institutions are critical. Unfortunately, we staff all these state institutions on political criteria, using political criteria of what do we call it again? Federal character, which is another pseudonym for mediocrity. And that's not how institutions that will perform are staffed. That is a major bane of the problems we have in our economy. You have a policy, you saddle an institution that cannot achieve its value statement with the responsibility to execute a critical policy. And it is all over. Just name it. In manufacturing, for instance, you could have the standard organization spending 9 months to approve a product for a manufacturer that has already built his factory, has already installed all this machinery, etc. What am I saying rather? The state institutions are very much lacking, and they cannot support any economic development. Until you have a reorientation, you have people who will have passion for their job, who will have passion for their job. I mean, there's a current scandal now in the nation, and it's not a one-off scandal. It's like the rule. You have a special corps who is promoting drugs, who is a drug kingpin. And you can see that reflected in virtually all the state institutions. Exactly what is their mandate to achieve, they go directly against it. So, for instance, you talk of agriculture. There was a time that they banned the importation of wheat. What was the option? After all, people are already used to eating bread, and they will ask for bread. And there will be social unrest if you don't give them bread. You don't ban wheat production, overnight. You don't put the cart before the horse. If you want to ban wheat production, you don't create a vacuum, because those who are eating bread before, they will continue to eat bread. So why not start with starting a wheat production revolution? Let us learn how to grow wheat. And we have territories in Nigeria that can grow all the wheat we need in Nigeria and still export. You go to Mambila Plateau, you go to Plateau, you can grow with there. The weather supports it. And so it is with virtually any other food item. Rice can grow anywhere in Nigeria. If you don't know, rice can grow anywhere in Nigeria. We can grow corn minimum of 3 times in a year, anywhere in Nigeria. You know, so we must have sincerity of purpose, not only right policies, you must have right institutions. And I will ask you to go and check on World Economic Forum Investment Attractiveness Index and the ranking of Nigeria. We are in the very lowest quartile. We are out of about 186 countries in 2020 because they suspended the production of that statistics sometimes. But we were in the lowest quartile, you know, and unacceptable quartile. And one of the criteria they ran was state institutions, you know. So I'm talking using objective criteria that we need to be serious, sincere, and face, you know, our reality. We can still transform, but it requires us transforming ourselves as human beings first, before we expect to have physical transformation.
Fantastic, fantastic. And if you are just joining in, I have been fielding questions to Mr. Adebisi SANDA FCA. I'll be looking at the subject of transforming the Nigerian economic structure and looking at the productivity question. We will go for a very short break now. Please stay on. We'll be back with our guest very shortly.
Hey, are you still thinking about why you should register for the ICAN Malaysia conference? Okay, stop thinking. Here's why. The conference focus this year is specifically targeted at ensuring that all delegates become future ready and fully equipped to navigate the current times. Also, there are lots of insights and discoveries that await you at this conference. You also get the chance to experience both the personal and professional impact of the conference. What about the networking, the tour experience, and lots of engaging interactions to bring you an all-round value? So what are you still thinking? Go on and get yourself registered. You can visit www.ican-malaysia.org today. Can't wait to see you.
Thank you for staying on. And Mr. Adebisi SANDA FCA, you are welcome back. There was something that you were raising the other time, and that is the fact that leadership policy focus is not leading by example. We know where we should be going. Institutions, infrastructures are not falling in that direction. So who will bear the cat? And okay, or generally, let me ask this question. What is your rating of the general production capacity of Nigeria today? Poor, fair, good, excellent, and why?
Well, when you talk of potential, very high. When you talk, if you go into, don't forget just last year, we had about 2 or 3 fintech companies in Nigeria that were valued at, I can't remember precisely, I think they were valued higher than the aggregate of, I think, about the 2 or 3 or 4 leading commercial banks in Nigeria. And these are institutions established by people in the age bracket 20 to 40. So what are we talking? We are saying that Nigeria is well equipped, but don't forget, we are talking of the average Nigerian. We are not talking of some small class of Nigerians. But what we are saying is that we can raise the average bar, we can raise it considerably if we have the right orientation and the right leadership. I mean, don't forget, Nigerians are not blind. If the political leaders are living the way they are living, about 70% of the budget of the federal as well as each of the states goes into emoluments and all the rest of it. I mean, each governor having like a fleet of about 20, 25 vehicles. I don't know what kind of madness is that. Even the British Prime Minister officially has not more than two cars. And we have our own, and that's an economy of over 4 trillion US. Nigeria with a GDP of less than 0.5 trillion. As a president that has a fleet of how many vehicles, you can't even count it. The same thing with aircrafts. So we are talking of raising the average productivity. But so long as you can see that there are, clusters, I won't say isolated, but you have clusters that have demonstrated the potentials, I think we can raise the bar. But if you talk of the generality, is far, far below expectation.
Very, 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 very moot point. And this dichotomy always worries me. It worries us in the institute. I dare say, I know some of our colleagues are listening from the diaspora. You look at the productivity in Nigeria is falling by the day. And same Nigerians abroad are excelling. To what extent will you say this economic structure, this uneven, unstructured economic structure is contributing to the failure? And do you think we need a homegrown development strategy to change this narrative?
Well, the private sector still has a lot to do. Especially the indigenous private sector. Don't forget, you have some rogue foreign investors in the country who are just here to fleece Nigeria. Some participated in the federal government privatization. And what did they do to the companies they bought? They simply dismantled most of the plant and carted them out of the country, of course, with the connivance of some public officers. I don't know how a country will be talking of industrialization, and in the over 20 years of the current civilian administration, the iron are still comatose. In the over 20 years of the civilian administration, electricity power is still comatose. The World Bank carried out studies and realized that if we can get the problem of electricity right, that Nigeria is assured of double-digit GDP growth, and that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. We require to have double-digit GDP growth over no less than a decade before our economy can transform. You know.
Very interesting.
So,
Very interesting.
So talking of the transformation, we all have a role to play. We all have a role to play. The middle class in Nigeria is laid back, disinterested in being active politically. I mean, there was on the social media a clip of some road transport workers union members who are already debating how they will vote and what they will do about the presidency. You don't see that of the middle class, who should actually be the engine of the driver of change in this area, because there are the people who are enlightened, who understand the workings of modern economy. But it's like they have become cynical, that it's a waste of time to bother about this nation. It's a lost cause. But it's not a lost cause. It's not a lost cause. One American president said categorically that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So even for nations that are already there, they don't spare their politicians because they are the same. The more room you give them, the more irresponsible they become. So
in fact, that takes me. That takes me to the question that got flashed on earlier. Olusoji was talking about how will you advise, how can we think globally and act locally in order to take Nigeria to the next level? And what's your take professionally? I guess you really have looked at that. But I'd like to quickly ask you, as we are rounding down this, we have heard of economic restructuring approaches like privatization, commercialization, deregulation, and liberalization. As an economic expert, are these approaches properly applied in Nigeria?
They are not. They are fraudulently applied, and I give you an example. When you are privatizing the public asset or the public company, a fundamental clause that should be in the purchase agreement, in the transfer agreement, is the fact that the successful buyer must have a plan for growing the industry or the company that is being sold to it, the public, because that is actually the reason why the state is selling to it, that is going to transform that company to achieve its ends. Because before those companies were established, they have been considered to be critical to the nation or to the country. So look at the recent, look at the experience we are now having with the power companies. These were privatized in 2013. And when they were privatized in 2013, the government ought to have signed, rather in the transfer agreement, the government ought to have insisted, one, the plan of the growth plan over the succeeding years to the sale. And usually the clause says that if you fail to meet all this threshold, the government can get new buyers to buy you out of that company. Because it's a critical covenant that you need to grow the companies. And now you look at the power distance. So when you ask all these concepts that have been applied in other parts of the world, have they been applied correctly in Nigeria? These are case studies that they have been fraudulently, they have been applied in name, in word, but not in reality, not in action. They've just scammed Nigerians. And because it's padi-padi and is the agreement of the powerful, the masses continue to suffer. But in other parts of the world, there will continue to be protests until things are gotten right. But here, I think there's a lot of lackluster, laid back with all of us, kind of.
I can't imagine.
And so we are enjoying, like fella said, suffering and smiling, you know.
Oh my God. So, I mean, the de facto, we are not there. The jury, we have it on paper that we seems to be there. Time not being a friend, I like to throw this as a matter of last question, because I know that our viewers would like to hear from you that apart from population size and landmass in Nigeria still occupying, a great chunk, is Nigeria still occupying the once glorious position of the economic giant of Africa?
No, you say besides the population size and the land area, whether we are truly the giant of Africa.
Yes, that's the question.
Well, my friend of several years, it was from him I first had this term, I think in '94 or so, and that is Pastor Tunde Lemon, the former deputy governor of the Central Bank. He said you should look at the wisdom of Solomon, not the age of Methuselah. So what have we got to show that we are giant? Is it population they eat, or is it land mass they eat? Are we truly giant? I don't think we are giant. We are not. We are nothing. But we can be giant if we want to be giant. Yeah. And to be giant is what we need to pursue. We should not be beating our chest that we are giant when we are really nothing. But since we can be giant, if we are fired to pursue becoming a giant, I think it will be my joy. But we should not continue to live in delusion.
Beautiful. I want to thank you, Mr. Sanda, for the insights that you have thrown into this subject, transforming the Nigerian economic structure and critically looking at the productivity question. As we draw the curtain here, I'd like to have what will be your last word to us as professionals and friends of the profession on this subject.
Well, I thank you immensely for the efforts you are making. This is a very heartening contribution by our institute, and for you as the anchor person and your team. I also believe that in our individual role, wherever we work, because we accountants are also part and parcel of the malaise. You hear of a lot of fraud, and you see an ICAN member, being at the center of it all, which is very sad indeed. The institute will not tolerate that. I know of some very notable citizens in the 70s, who are just knocked off of the register of the institute. We'll get back, we'll get there eventually. So in our own individual role, we need to also watch that so that we are not part of the cause of this problem. We need to transform our economy, no doubt about that. If our economy is not transformed, the problem of unemployment will not be solved, because they are interwoven. They are interwoven. It's only if you get your structure right, if you are producing what you are eating, what you are wearing, what you are living in or living on, that's when you can have employment and your people. I can give you some instances. Take, for instance, the number of telephone sets that handset that we buy in this country annually. If the government is a serious government, it's a matter of calling the telecoms company that you guys should start to build these items in Nigeria. And they have no choice. They have to build, because there is already market for it. You know, but to be thinking there's an invisible hand, if there is sufficient profit in that industry, people will go into it. It doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work out that way.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Sonda. And, to our listeners and those who have fielded questions, I want to say a big thank you. Thank you again to our guests. We shall be calling upon you. I'd like you to just stay on. We are still on. We are going to be back very shortly. Yes, I like to thank our online viewers. A few announcements I like to make. I like to say we should loud it. We should loud it. ICAN loud sits along with Nigerians because Nigeria's flutter wave has reached $3 billion in valuation, and this was after 250 million fundraising successfully done. While Nigerian banks allow for easy digital payments, we still know that more than 90% of transactions still performed in cash. We loud that. I also like, on a positive note, to indicate that today, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has announced that Nigeria's GDP growth has gone by 3.98% in the fourth quarter of 2021. And that has shown a sustained positive growth for the fifth consecutive quarter since the recession witnessed in 2020. Say bravo and believing that your institute is very much in there. I also want to quickly alert our viewers and our professional colleagues that our 2022 ICAN Economic Discourse with the theme Exploring Nigeria's Growth Opportunities and Mitigating the Challenges in the Digital Area is scheduled for Wednesday, the 23rd, 2022. Dr. Babatunde Adebisi, the Chief Consultant of B. Adebisi Associates, will be the keynote speaker. This is not the end for us on ICAN on Air. Next Tuesday, our next episode will be, that is Tuesday, February 22, 2022 at 6 p.m. West African time on all our social media, links. Please tell somebody about it. We are going to be looking at financial modeling, and that's the topic. Financial modeling. What the professional accountants need to know? Our guest will be David Brown, FCA. He is, by definition, the managing partner of D. Brown Consulting and also international consultant to the World Bank. Mr. David Brown, He has trained more than 20,000 people for free on analytics and hosts webinars weekly. His most valuable is won the Microsoft's most valuable professional for 4 years consecutively. Manages one of Nigeria's largest e-learning platforms, www.officetraining.org. You don't want to miss that. Let me leave you with this quotation. It is the economic stupid. The economy is stupid. That's linked to William Jefferson Clinton. That's Bill Clinton, the 42nd POTUS, by that time being the President of the United States of America. Again, listen to this. That the ultimate resource in economic development is people. It is people, not capital or raw materials, that develop an economy. I attribute that to Peter Drucker. You be the change you like to see until we come your way again on Tuesday, February the 22nd, 2022. I remain Akifatumke, your anchor. ICAN on air. Bye for now.